Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final session of the Economic Times Phoenix CXO Summit APAC 2022. This is going to be our closing keynote with none other than Jeff Sutherland, founder and chairman at Scrum Inc. and founding partner Tesla Investment Holdings. In this one-on-one conversation, Jeff will be sharing his insights on building agile organizations and businesses. The pandemic spurred a paradigm shift and changed the way we interact with our surroundings. It influenced customer needs, consumption habits, and more. Hence, it is time to let go of traditional ways of working and build agile organizations. Organizations that foster an agile culture can seamlessly adapt to the changing market needs. Agility involves practices, values, and behavior that enable the business to become more resilient, flexible, and innovative, especially in the face of uncertainty. In this exclusive one-on-one conversation, Jeff will talk to us about how leaders can build agile organizations by breaking free from traditional styles of top-down management and enabling greater participation of employees in decision-making. He will also tell us how agile organizations keep customers and their needs at the center of their business operations, as customers today are better informed and know what they want and where they want it. Jeff is the inventor and co-creator of Scrum. He's a West Point graduate, former fighter pilot, and cancer researcher, as well as CTO of 11 different software companies. He launched the first Scrum team in 1993 and has shepherded its growth into almost every industry, be it finance, healthcare, higher education, and telecom. He co-authored the best-selling book Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. And his latest book is the Scrum book, The Spirit of the Game. Thank you so much for joining us for this summit, Jeff. It is an absolute honor to have you with us.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Great, thank you. And without any further delay, let me jump right into asking Jeff some very pertinent questions that the audience of today would love to seek answers to. So the pandemic has taught the world of business something beyond operational and management transformation, Jeff. The lessons of inculcating an agile and resilient mindset and ingraining the same principles at the core of leadership is the way forward. As a distinguished leader of your stature, how have you navigated the changes leadership has undergone in the past 2 years?
Well, the Agile Education Program, and particularly Scrum at Scale, is directed towards leadership and helping leadership understand how to be agile, how to run agile companies. Now, this has been particularly important because we have really two things going on right now. We have a massive technology change. For example, the transportation and energy area is being totally disrupted. And this is being done by technologies that are going into every area around AI, robotics, 3D printing. Every area is being disrupted, including food, including materials. And in the middle of all this, we have the pandemic, which immediately put people remote, which Scrum is designed to work really well remotely. So those people doing Scrum did very well. In fact, from an investment point of view, we have had the best year in history, the last 2 years, particularly last year, because our agile companies were able to totally function and take away market share from the thousands of companies that were going bankrupt. So let me give you a simple example. We actually have a Scrum restaurant in London. And on the day of the shutdown, within 1 day, they converted themselves into a takeout delicatessen, and they went through the pandemic fine. And most of the restaurants around them all went out of business. And now they have all the business. Okay, that's the dynamic. We're seeing that in pharmaceuticals, we're seeing that in automobiles, we're seeing that everywhere, that the ability to rapidly change in a dynamic environment enables you to grab market share from all the competitors that are too slow to respond. And COVID just accelerated that dramatically.
I absolutely agree with you. I think organizations had to reinvent themselves overnight, as you said. Businesses had to do it, be it the business model that they were functioning in, the kind of operating models they had, the way they managed their workforce, everything had to be changed overnight. And I think that's been one of the biggest positives of the pandemic, because it forced change, and companies who were adaptable, who were resilient, who were proactive in adapting to this change have been at the forefront of all the transformation that has happened. So Jeff, thank you so much for sharing that with us. The ever-changing and evolving nature of the business climate is something every organization is grappling with worldwide today, Jeff. Amidst overwhelming changes, unexpected transitions, various paradigm shifts, what are the most effective strategies, according to you, to build agile organizations?
Well, some years ago, one of the largest Japanese companies came to us, wanted to do a joint venture called Scrum Inc. Japan. They were 20% owned by Toyota. They said, we're going to be the trainers for Toyota. And the way we're teaching Scrum is not adequate. We need a different program. And from that, we developed the Agile education program. And when we teach Scrum, there are actually 4 dimensions. We teach the basics of the Scrum Guide, what Scrum is, but that's really only 25% of the teaching. Scrum derives from Lean. So Scrum Masters, product owners need to have some basic understanding of Lean principles, Lean tooling. Also, over the years, and particularly in one of my latest books on patterns, we've written down the key patterns of play that enable Scrum teams to be hyper productive, go 5 to 10 times faster than normal teams. Those patterns need to be implemented. And then the final thing is, today almost no one runs with one Scrum team. There are many Scrum teams. So how to scale that, how to go to 100 Scrum teams and actually have productivity be 100 times more is a real challenge, because typically when you add more people, things slow down. Okay, everybody's noticed that. So to add more people and actually speed up, you need Scrum at scale. So these 4 components are what we use to go to in our training. We have a global training program, global trainer program, many trainers in India in the AEP program. And we go into companies and we start building understanding of these 4 components: the Scrum itself, the Lean tooling, the patterns of performance, and how to run an organization at scale, which at Scrum at Scale requires the leadership to actually run as a Scrum team to run the Agile piece of the organization. And it's the only framework that does that. But it's been, and as a result of that, it's been extremely successful.
That's a great thought, Jeff. I think, yes, when you talk about scale, becoming agile becomes all the more complex. And the way how Scrum at scale can be helpful in this, I think that's a great example of how organizations can plan how they can become more agile going forward also. So thank you for sharing that. Also, Jeff, as digital transformation is the default mode for most businesses now, it brings with it a number of challenges as well as opportunities. With technologies and innovations have helped secure the future of which technologies, according to you, have helped secure the futures of business transformation? And how do you think is technology intrinsic to building more agile businesses?
Well, digital transformations are the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have a major investment, for example, in Tesla. Look at what's happened at Tesla. Their move is to automate the factory. And initially digital automation, then robotics. But in the new factories that are coming online this year, they figured out if you have too many robots, that's a problem. So they developed a way to have this huge press that can stamp the whole front end and whole back end of the car in milliseconds. And each one of those presses eliminates 200 robots. And it makes the factory go down to about half the size and be able to produce twice as many cars at half the size. Okay, so if you look at our book, Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, that's what Tesla's doing at the factory level. Okay, so it's driven by digital transformation, but the massive change is in the way things are put together, the way things are manufactured, in reducing the number of not only people required, but reducing the number of robots required, and really reinventing the way we build things. So Scrum is at the point of being really good for digital transformations because we come out of software, but software is eating the world, is what the venture capitalists say. Okay, if you look at the amount of software, for example, in a car, 10 or 20 years ago it was 5 or 10%. Now it's almost 50%. And people will say with the electric cars that really they're iPads on wheels. They're really a software platform that happens to have wheels. And when we get into autonomous driving, which is again going to radically change the market, it's totally, that's where the digital transformation is going, right? It means that the car drives itself. The manufacturing plant runs itself. Okay, and people are there to kind of check up, make sure things are going in the right way, but it's much bigger than just the digital transformation that people are thinking right now, right? It's really taking over the whole way of running, of manufacturing, of building, of operating companies. So our leadership, they need to understand Scrum, how to run an agile organization, but it goes way beyond that. The whole organization is going to be transformed in the way they do business. The materials, the hardware, everything is going to be altered. So again, we've had great success with Scrum because it is perfect. It's designed to do digital transformations, right? It's a tool that can globally run teams, hundreds, thousands of teams all over the world. It is the core of business for Amazon, for Apple, for Microsoft, the three largest companies in the world. That's why we're talking about Scrum. That's why we're talking about digital transformation, because the world is being transformed right now.
Absolutely, and I think you gave a absolutely interesting example of how Tesla reinvented itself, right? Being a car manufacturing company today, if it can do that in the work that took twice or thrice as time and half the time, that's one of the biggest reinventions we can talk about. And as you said, Scrum is really helping companies reach that level of doing more work with lesser technology is the core, but how can you do more work with it? And how can you replace, not just have the best resources put to place rather than having too much of technology, but having the right resources doing the right kind of work. So great points there. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. Moving forward, we are talking about the technology. But the adoption of technology is only one aspect of digital transformation, Jeff. It requires a cultural paradigm shift within organizations across industries. It is a call for leaders to integrate agility and resilience through technological advancements. So what are some imperative skills both leaders and also employees must learn in order to function effectively in a digitally mature world, according to you?
Well, we've done a couple of papers on how management changes when companies transformed. Okay, so if you look at the work of Tony Seba is really good at looking for digital transformations, and he particularly focuses on transportation, on energy, and what's happened is things are changing so fast that the environment is unstable, the economy is unstable, our financial system is changing radically. I mean, the Turkish economy is crashing. They're going to cryptocurrencies. That's going to affect every bank in the world if that spreads, okay? So the whole underpinnings of how you're even funding your digital transformation is going to be changing. And so what Tony says is the only way through this tremendous change, both the technology and finance, is going to be self-organizing teams. Teams that can respond quickly to change and can collaborate together and are not handicapped by a bureaucratic levels of management that are going to block them from changing quick enough to survive. So self-organizing teams that are self-managing, which is the way the Scrum works. So leadership needs to know how to lead self-organizing teams. You don't manage them because they are self-managing. This is a huge mental shift. But the senior leadership that can make that shift will build great teams. And then when you run into crisis, and COVID was a great example, as soon as COVID hit, the truly agile companies' stock prices started going to the moon, okay? It wasn't just Tesla. It wasn't just Microsoft. It wasn't just Amazon. It was John Deere, the oldest farm machinery company of the world. And why is their stock price going to, their stock went up more than Amazon during COVID? Why is that? They're implementing Scrum at scale. And this past year, the board of directors gave the Agile coaches the highest award in the company. So here's what the leadership needs to understand. They need to lead, not micromanage. They need to train the organization and the Agile coaches and the Scrum Masters and product owners to self-manage. And they need to realize they are the most valuable piece of their organizations right now. It's the Scrum Masters, it's the product owners, particularly the chief product owners, that are going to make their company great or take it down. So they need to get the right people. It's just like at Toyota. Toyota is driven by the chief engineers. 95% of Toyota's profits come from the chief engineers. They are the product owners in Scrum. The CEO of Toyota says, my job is to support the shushas, the chief engineers. That's the CEO's job, is to make sure he has great product owners in place. And he asked them, what do you need from me as CEO to build a great product and compete and dominate the market? Okay, so this is a big shift in thinking. I know I've worked with a lot of people in India, but it's true in every country. We have a lot of leadership that has been used to command and control, micromanagement, which makes things not agile, makes things slow, and makes companies go bankrupt in COVID, okay? So that's the leadership mindset that needs to do a dramatic shift.
I think that's a great thought. I think if leaders can let go of the command and control mode, as you said, and if they could stop micromanaging and empower their teams, as you said, empower them to self-manage themselves, self-organize themselves, that will be the future of any agile organization. Agile automatically, when decision making is democratized, you don't have to wait for that different levels of approvals coming from CEOs and all that top bottom approach. That is how it's going to work in the future. And as you rightly gave some examples of companies who have done it so well, and they've proved that being agile has led to not just becoming successful revenue wise, but also in becoming better organizations overall. So thank you so much for sharing that, Jeff. Thank you so much. So Jeff, future proofing of business transformation requires organizations to be developing optimal tech strategies and digitally oriented business models. So before we bid adieu to this conversation, share with our C-suite audience today your vision for the future of business transformation and the role of technology in enhancing the same.
Okay, I want to say a little bit about that last question before we go into this, and that is some suggestions for leadership. A biggest problem when leadership takes over or tries to build an agile organization, they have to give up the command and control, the micromanagement, give up the hierarchy, the bureaucracy. And what we find is that many managers feel they don't know what to do. Okay, well, this is a real problem because you actually have more to do. And if you're not doing it, if you're confused, then that is going to hurt your organization, all right?
Yes.
So what leadership needs to learn how to do is, what is the mission? What is the goal? How do we communicate that to everybody? How do we make sure there's a visible backlog throughout the organization where everybody's focused on those goals? How do we get the right people in place to self-manage the teams moving towards those goals? That is a big job. And the biggest challenge for leadership is to actually flip into that mode of leadership and not be confused because now they're no longer micromanaging the people that they've been micromanaging, okay?
And I think that's what leaders are all about, right? Transformative, authentic leaders are just like this.
Yeah, and so we try to teach that in the Agile education program. Mm-hmm. In terms of digital transformation, that's a term that, you know, in the early days, and in some places we're still in the early days, we're going to use more software to run the organization, right? We're going to gather a whole bunch of data, big data, so we'll know what to do, right? Because today, you know, we used to have marketing just say, oh, we're going to do this new product. You can't do that today. You have to say, we're going to try this new thing, and then if we get feedback from the market that they like it, then we're going to invest in that, right? You always have to be looking for the data coming in to make decisions. And so that's been part of the origins and the drive for digital transformations, is to actually get the information in so that you actually know what to do, because in an agile environment, everything's changing. You can't know unless you get actually real data, okay? But as I said, that is the tip of the iceberg, because once you start gathering that data, it's like autonomous driving in cars. Once you gather enough data, the car can get smart enough to drive itself. And that's what's happening to the business. And so this requires I think a higher level of leadership and understanding. Elon Musk has demonstrated that. Here's a leader, here's a CEO. Where's he sleeping tonight? Probably on the factory floor, right? At Toyota, they used to always say, you need to go to the Gemba to see what's going on. You never make a management decision in your office. You go to the factory floor, you spend time looking, and only then, when you have the data, would you make a decision. Well, Elon Musk is a perfect example of that. He's sleeping on the factory floor many nights. He wakes up and he sees what's going on before he has his coffee in the morning, right? And so he knows, he's got the pulse of the business so that he knows what needs to happen. And that is a really critical leadership role, is to have the pulse of the business. And you can't get it by sitting in a corner office. Okay, so the digital transformation is just the start of your organization learning how to run itself. And by having your organization run itself, it doesn't mean it doesn't need you as a leader pointing the direction, making the vision clear, making sure you have the right people in place, making sure what's going on the assembly line is what needs to be going on today, right? That's what Elon's worried about. So it's a different type of leadership. It's actually more engaged with the work and with the people. And that's what we need, is leadership that understands how to work with the people.
Absolutely, Jess. I think that's a very beautiful concept, and I think I'm hoping that most leaders are kind of learning this. That in order to be at the top of your game, you have to be in the game with where the work is happening, right? You have to be on the shop
Right.
floor. You have to be looking at how the work is being done. You can't sit in your eyes, in your glass towers and think everything is going fine. And the pandemic kind of threw that on people, and they had to jump up and take up these roles and get more involved in the day-to-day working of how their businesses are running, and that has been a very positive change. And yes, technology will play a very, very big role in the future, but leadership, how does leadership work on it? How does it bring the right kind of technology? How does it inculcate agility into the organization will decide what the future of any workplace or any organization would look like. So thank you for sharing that, Jeff. Any closing notes from you on what the future will look like when we talk of business transformations? Every year is coming out to be different, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think this is one of the greatest times in history to be alive, despite the problems with the pandemic and challenges that people faced. The amount of transformation that's going on, the amount of new technology that's going to be rolling out, it's going to move us into a sci-fi world. Elon's going to go to Mars. Okay, we're going to become an interplanetary civilization. That's not that far off. And we need leadership that can take the whole planet into the future. And our biggest threat is old style leadership, command and control, hierarchy, that's too slow to actually make things work. That will cause businesses to fail. It will cause economies to fail. It will cause political unrest. And that's our risks. On the positive side, if we can get out in front of the problems with agile leadership, with people really leading, having a vision, having those self-organizing teams behind them, the amount of production that we can do, we're already doing twice as much with half as much in the car business with one company, okay? The other companies are trying to figure out what they're going to do. But we can do that everywhere. That means the cost of everything will come down, right? So that means people have more capability. They have more, they don't have to spend as much money on just living, right? They have more resources, they have more capabilities. So we're at the cusp of a great transformation on the planet. And it's driven by the digital transformation, but they are the tip of the iceberg that's producing autonomous organizations, self-managing teams that are building things faster, cheaper, more elegant, and more capable, and freeing people up from the daily struggle just to get enough food to eat.
Absolutely great. Thank you so much, Jeff. I totally agree with you. The future of business transformation will be all about agility, autonomy, democratization, and it will be all about how leaders adapt to this change and take their organizations forward by being more forward thinking, by letting go of the command and control model, by being in the game, and by being agile themselves. So I think that on that note, thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. It was such an insightful, such an inspirational conversation. Thank you for joining us, Jeff.
Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. And I hope our audience enjoyed this session with Jeff and learned more on how you can become more agile leaders and then lead your organizations into becoming more agile for the future. So thank you for joining us, everyone. It has been an overwhelming experience for us. Thank you for being so participative and supportive. Do join us for the closing note of this summit, which will be coming up next. So see you all there, and thank you once again.